It's the most anticipated player review we've had yet. Tonight, we're talking about Nikita Kucherov.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Adam Danker. Today's episode of Locked On Lightning is brought to you by our friends at the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use that code Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. On today's episode of Locked On Lightning, we're continuing our player reviews, and we are talking about Nikita Kucherov. And I always feel whenever we talk about 86, there's so much to unpack. We always are in awe when we see this guy play because, and I think Lightning fans, and I'm not saying all Lightning fans, but I think that I've definitely been guilty of it from time to time with him. I feel like we take what he does on a nightly basis for granted, and I'm very curious to see how many Lightning fans, when his career does indeed come to an end, and we have quite some time before that happens, but very curious as to how many people, and maybe this is just pure nostalgia, or maybe just when 86 is no longer with the Lightning or in the league. I'm very curious as to how Lightning fans and hockey fans as general will take his absence. We'll obviously look at the all-time greats and say, wow, we did not appreciate this guy while he was in the league. It was, we didn't realize how great he really was until it was all over. And, we're obviously going to look at this generation of players, the McDavids, the Matthews, the Stamkoses, the Ovechkins, the Crosbys, and of course, Kucherov. And I'm very curious when it's all done as to where Kucherov, and stats aside, because, I think that we could all agree when we look at hockey players, it's not all about stats. I think we also take era, division, what they had around them. There's so many variables when it comes to judging a player's career. And I think that we're going to look at Kucherov, and I firmly believe this. And this is a conversation we could have down the road in the summer. If you all want that to happen, we could definitely talk about this. And I'm sure there'll be some discussion underneath in the comments on our YouTube channel. I'm very curious as to when we look back on Nikita Kucherov's career, how many people will agree with me when I say that this guy could have done the same exact thing on any other team? Because he's not one of those players, and we've established this throughout many, many episodes in which we've spoken about Nikita Kucherov. But I think we could all agree to a certain extent that he's very much a scorer. And I think and we'll discuss this as we go ahead and take a look at, his season and what we expect him to have in stats wise. But I think he could go to any team, really, when you look at his numbers and the way he plays the game, and say he could be a scorer and he could be a facilitator. And, obviously maybe his team wouldn't have the same success, but I think that he would have had the same success to a certain degree. So very curious as to see what people think about that. But jumping right into his season, now it has been spoken about the last two players that we reviewed, and go ahead go back to those episodes if you haven't already. We spoke about Braden Point. We spoke about Steven Stamkos. And I think the same theme when we talk about Point and Stamkos applies to Nikita Kucherov, that as long as this guy stays healthy, he is, especially Nikita Kucherov, he is definitely in the running for a Hart Trophy. Definitely, and we'll talk more about this, if he's aggressive, could definitely be in the running for a Ross Trophy as well. And looking back at Nikita Kucherov's season, 82 games, 30 goals, 83 points. That comes out to 113 points, -2 on the plus minus. 4 of his goals that he had this year were game winners, and 8 of those of the goals that he had this year were power play goals. And when I look at this season, when I look at Nikita Kucherov, and I think when we're looking at what he did right, I think we could all agree when we look at his season that the one thing he did well on a nightly basis was make the other team sweat without even sometimes shooting the puck. And when we look at that, that is definitely something that, as we go along in this episode, we'll agree and at times disagree with, that is a pro and that is a con. Because when I look at him and I look at his game, one of his greatest talents is also one of his biggest weaknesses. And what that is his willingness and his ability to pass the puck, to facilitate the puck, and set up his teammates with these unbelievable passes that only maybe a handful of players in the league could really go and dish to their teammates like that. And when you look at the players that we've already spoken about on our end of the year player reviews, Stamkos, Point, those guys have immensely benefited from Nikita Kucherov's greatest talent, and that is being the point guard for this team, being able to go out there and really allow, not really allow, that's probably not a good word, really force the other team to divert their full attention upon him. Because, and maybe there's only one other player in the league that has this talent where not only are they a world-class passer, but a world-class scorer. And that player is Connor McDavid, who I firmly believe that if he did not have the season that he had this year, I think we could look at what Kucherov did. And we could also debate this at a later time if you all want. I'd be happy to do it. But if McDavid's season is definitely a reason as to why Draisaitl had the season he had, I think we could, to a certain degree, all come together and agree on that. So really, if we're saying that McDavid and Draisaitl are having average years, I would say maybe 113, 114, maybe 15. Let's say that. Let's say maybe 120 tops. Okay? If those guys are having those kinds of seasons, then the MVP conversation might be a little tougher in a way, or maybe, I don't know, it depends on, I guess, what hockey team you play for. I mean, what hockey team you root for, and what part of the country or continent that you really reside in. Because I think, no offense to people up in Canada, I think unless you are a Leafs or a Flames fan, especially a Flames fan, I think you could agree and appreciate, and obviously say that McDavid and Draisaitl took this MVP race and turned into a two-man, if you really want to stretch out to that. But if you get somewhat NHL average seasons out of McDavid and Draisaitl, then Nikita Kucherov's season, and just to put in perspective, he finished in third, tied for third in points with David Pastrnak, who had a phenomenal season as well. I think the MVP trophy race is definitely a lot closer than most people would like to admit. And like I said, that's all really depending on bias, where you reside, what team you root for. But I think we could also agree, though, that, like I said, the scoring has evolved. The what maybe was once constituted as an incredible offensive season is starting to become, and this is no fault, and I'm not saying this as an excuse, or trying to put blame, saying oh, Nikita Kucherov isn't getting his due, he's not being recognized. What I'm saying is that I feel like we've gotten to a certain point, and I've spoken about this on the Locked On NHL show. We've gotten to a certain point with the play in this league where it's gotten so competitive, and that shows you how great the scoring has been, where 113-point season, regardless of how you feel about it, is still an insane season to have. Anytime you hit the 100-point mark, I think you have an incredible season. Okay. It's kind of one of those things to equate it to baseball. It's kind of like hitting 45 home runs, or maybe even in this, we could even maybe agree that 40 was a pretty incredible stat to hit in home runs. And to put that into perspective, you look in the 90s in hockey, 100-point season was phenomenal. Some years that would win you the Hart Trophy. Same thing with baseball. 40 home run season, 100 RBIs. Sometimes that would give you the MVP award. And obviously, in both instances, the game has evolved where the offense is getting so good that we're starting to, as a complete fan base, underappreciate what this guy accomplished this year. And we also have to look at it the other way for Nikita Kucherov, because, and we'll talk about more of this in the second segment, but we also have to realize that if he just would have shot the puck a little bit more and scored a little bit more, maybe 10 more, even look at the ramifications of what kind of season that could have been, where now you're talking about 123 points, 40 goals, 83 assists. I mean, that's an insane season to have by any standard. So a great season for Kucherov. Obviously, like I said, whenever you talk about this guy, there is a lot to unpack with him, a lot to say. And really, I'm going to try and do my best to really unpack it all in the 30-minute format that we have here on this episode. In just a little bit, we'll be talking about maybe some of the things we hope or wish he could do better this year and next season as well. We'll be talking about that as well. But first, I want to talk about one of our sponsors today, and that is our friends over at Athletic Greens. Now, if you have not heard about Athletic Greens, you got to get on that. Listen, summer's right around the corner, and if you want to be in your best shape possible for a bikini season or beach season, you definitely got to go over to Athletic Greens. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. It is the right supplement for you. It costs less than $3 a day, so you're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. It's cheaper than getting all those different supplements yourself. So right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with the convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. So, as always, I like to thank everybody for making us your first listen of the day. And if you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It absolutely blew up during the playoffs, and it's still continuing to grow, all in thanks to you all, your continued support. So go ahead and do that. So if you're just joining us midway through the episode, go ahead and rewind. But if you want to stay with us right here, we're talking about Nikita Kucherov, the phenomenal season, just looking at him as a player, reviewing everything that he did. We spoke about just how very good of a player he is. And sometimes that kind of gets lost just because of what everybody else is doing. I mean, like I said, you look at McDavid, you look at Pastrnak, you look at Draisaitl. I mean, the list goes on of just the immense amount of talent that is spread out throughout this entire league, and it's only going to get the pool is only going to get more and more full of players who could just go out there and just rip off 100-point seasons. And Nikita Kucherov, really, I think that as I said, and this is something that it helps the Lightning most times because, as we all know, especially this season, the Lightning didn't do a good job of coming out of the gate or really just cycling the puck. It was more so a sprint to the finish line. Who could go back and forth and win the track race? And as we've stated countless times on this show and the last couple of seasons as well, the league has caught up with that. You know, this isn't 2019 where the Lightning are during the regular season, as I like to affectionately call them, the greatest show on ice. And I still will call them that forever, regardless of what the Boston Bruins did this year. You know, they did it a certain way. But Nikita Kucherov, as we all know, was a big part of that. And whenever the Lightning have success, he is always going to be a big part of that. And that's why it makes the numbers that he had this season all that more impressive, because given the offensive troubles that this team has had, he was a big reason for getting this team started in most games, and really his contributions towards this team's success and to even them getting to the playoffs and, you know, just kind of weathering the storm that was the Lightning's 22-23 season cannot be understated by the effect that 86 has had on them. Having said that, one of the things that, if you've been a long-time listener or watcher on our YouTube channel for quite some time, you know that one of the things that I always knock him for is that his just inability to be consistently aggressive shooting the puck. He averaged a little under 3.5 shots a game, which for someone of his caliber of talent, and, you know, some people might disagree with this take, and that's perfectly fine, given the amount of talent that is on this team. You know, the Stamkoses, the Sorellis, the Points, the Pauls, the Hagels. Given having those guys on the team, especially when he plays for the most part on the same line as Stamkos and Point, you know, you might say, well, you know what, he doesn't need to shoot that much. Well, I disagree. I think in most games, and, you know, I'm sure if someone goes back and counts the amount of shots per game, the Lightning, for the most part, did much better. That wasn't English the first time. Did much better when Nikita Kucherov was shooting the puck with reckless abandon. Now, I'm not saying he has to go out there and shoot 10 shots a night. No, that's not something that is feasible. That's not something that is going to be able to be sustainable over the course of the season, where it's not going to backfire on him. I would say more so, I would wish, my new wish for the upcoming season is that I would very much like to see him around the 4.5 shots per game, because as we spoke about in the beginning of the episode, that his ability is to make the other team think and really almost struggle over, is he going to shoot? Is he going to pass? Because he could hurt you both. I would like to see him use the approach, especially in the beginning of the games, of kind of setting the tone by shooting the puck a lot. Now, whether that be maybe two shots, maybe 2 to 3 shots in the first period, maybe 1 to 2 in the first period, just to kind of make the other goaltender and the opposing defense kind of try and, maybe overcommit when he has the puck on the wing, because that will also allow him and open up space for where, and we've seen this countless times for him where he's done that, whether it be late in games or, sometimes early in games, he has shot the puck with so much aggression where the opposing team is somewhat scared of really shooting, of really shooting themselves in the foot and allowing him to shoot the puck, because let's face it, he is one of the best in the league when it comes to picking corners, when to getting the tight spots on goaltenders, and that's why I think in the long run it'll help him. It'll allow him to either score a lot of goals, which we all know. I firmly believe that even though his career high in a season is 41, I think he has that ability. I really think he has the ability to get to 45, 50. I'm not saying he's a 60 goal scorer. I think he's kind of past that point in his career where he could get those numbers. But I think if we see a lot more aggression from him shooting the puck, not only will his goal numbers will go up, I think his point numbers will go up. I think that if he goes out there and he takes more of a shoot heavy approach, because the passes and the points and the assists are gonna come. The opportunities are gonna be there because there are simply just too many weapons for this guy at his disposal. I think that we could see him take his game up to another level, and this is something that I spoke very much about when we were talking about Braden Point. We were looking at the player reviews. Now, granted, they do play the game somewhat differently. Point is more of a let me use my speed to beat you kind of guy, where Kucherov really likes to just set things up and allow his teammates to get ready. And I think that Kucherov really very much understands that his team is so much better when they are cycling the puck, when they are getting it in deep in the zone and really making that defense really stress and sweat out there. And I think if he is able to shoot more and score more, I think that the assist numbers will go up, and I think that we could see, somewhat of a replication of 18-19, where he had 128 points, 87 assists, and 41 goals. I really think that we could see that. Now, I understand, like, in this NHL, as long as Connor McDavid is playing at the level he is, and as well as Leon Draisaitl, and Nathan McKinnon gets healthy and plays a full NHL season, it's not going to be the top of the league, but it's going to be one of those things where I think down the line for this Lightning team, at least, it's going to open up everything. It's going to open up the door to players getting to levels that we've never seen them get to before on this Lightning team. I think you see a Kucherov who scores more. If you see him maybe get to the 120 point mark, I think that's really something that Lightning fans should try to, should keep an eye on and really hope that he gets to, because that means that he's opening things up for everybody, that he's even scoring more himself, that Braden Point, we could very well see a 55, 60 goal season next year. We could see maybe Steven Stamkos being more dynamic in his shot selection and his scoring. We could see guys like Brandon Hagel take it up to another level. We could see Nick Paul start to become more of that consistent 5-tool player and score a little bit more. I'm like I said, when Kucherov plays well, This Lightning team is one of the best in the league, and he is unmatched only one player and his ability to make his team better on any given night. So let me know in the comments below what you think about that, and we'll wrap things up in just a little bit. But first, I want to talk about our friends over at the Gametime app. Now, if you haven't heard about Gametime, well, you need to get to it because I love this app. I used them a couple of months ago when the Lightning were in New York and they were playing the Rangers. I got tickets last minute and they did not disappoint. Well, listen, if you don't know about Gametime, well, guess what? Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. They got flash deals and last minute tickets, easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. Images of seat views. You don't want to be sitting behind a pole. Lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, etc., etc. So snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use that code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem that code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So once again, thank you everybody for making us your first listen of the day. And if you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. We are available wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. Yeah, I mean, much more is there to say about Kuch, other than the fact that, and I didn't mention this in the last segment, but one of his other faults, and it's one of those things where I think it's more of a game plan thing. I'm not going to 100%, kill him on this, even though I have on Twitter. There are games when he disappears. And I think some of it has to do with that he is very selective with his shot, as well as, I think that, and this might sound odd to a certain degree. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this take. But I feel like to a certain degree, we know that there is at times some sort of tension, if you want to call it, between him and Coop. But I feel like somewhat Cooch, when he disappears in games, it's not so much that he is struggling. I think it's more so he just gets bored with the game planning. And I mean that by it in a way that it also doesn't fit his skill set to a certain degree. As we all know, John Cooper loves to run and gun, especially early on to set the tone. As we all know, 8 times out of 10, maybe 7 times out of 10, depending on the opponent, it really hasn't worked this season. And we've seen it kind of ties in with the Lightning on being unable to really get things going on their end early on. And it kind of falls on Kucherov to kind of just get this team back into it later in the game, whether it be late in the first or at some point in the second, and so on and so forth. But I think that really John Cooper, and I'm not killing him as well. I'm not criticizing him, where he needs to change the whole playbook based off of, Nikita Kucherov. But I think that you need to play the game to where it is more centered around your most dynamic player's needs and his skill set. Not saying that Cooch can't play in a rush type offense. It's just not where the league is anymore. That's not something that's going to set you above any other team in the league. I just think that you need to, and we've seen this more times than not this season, this be the issue for the Lightning, where they really need to be that setup type offense. They need to get back to basics. They need to facilitate the puck. They need to get it in deep. And we don't see that a lot. And when your best player, when that is one of his biggest assets, is being able to set up teammates in that kind of offense, in that kind of setup, with these phenomenal passes. Listen, I think you need to play to the strengths of that guy. I think that instead of it being 70% rush, 30% setup, I think you need to see. I think there needs to be some sort of humbling reflection for not only Cooch, it's the coaching staff too, that has as a whole that has a say in all this. You need to take a look back and realize and ask yourself what you did well this year as a team, as we are doing during these player reviews, and realize that one of your consistent players, when he is healthy, is much more successful when you're in the cycle offense. Now, having said that, when you have a thoroughbred in Braden Point, you also got to play to his strengths. But I think also Point can thrive more so in the cycle offense as well. Like we said on his episode, his biggest thing is that he just needs to become more dynamic. And obviously, as he gets older, he is going to lose a little speed underneath him. And I think that, what better time to get him more so challenged in that aspect than to do it now, especially when Kucherov is pushing 30. Stamkos, we all know what he's capable of in this kind of offense. And like I said, Point, you definitely want to get him going in that kind of mindset now, sooner rather than later. So, maybe playing that kind of mindset, going out with that kind of offense is probably the best thing for you and is not such a terrible thing. So maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll see the Lightning kind of do something that they don't really do very often, and that is evolve. And I guarantee you, if they do that, because we all see it when they do get back to that offense, to that type of play, it's puts them up head and shoulders above a lot of teams in this league. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you disagree? Do you agree with what we said here today about Nikita Kucherov? And as always, we'll be back tomorrow for another player review. So go ahead and check that out. So in the meantime, that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk to you in the next one.